If you've ever felt like you're drowning in all those passwords that you need to remember when you're online, then you're not alone. New research confirms that now we all have so many different accounts for shops, banks, or simply logging onto your emails that we often forget almost half of the passwords that we've set up for them. Maybe that's why so many of us still often stick to the same one, or something very similar. But if that makes our lives easier, it does exactly the same for the fraudsters, making it much simpler for them to intercept our details and use them in identity fraud, a crime which is very much on the rise.
It doesn't matter how meticulous you are in trying to protect all your personal data. If a criminal is determined enough, they will find it and then use that information against you and rip you off.
Cases of identity fraud have increased by 1/3 in the last year. But that doesn't mean we're all getting the message when it comes to online security.
Do you have the same password for everything?
Well, I've got to admit, yes.
And PIN number.
You realise how dangerous that is?
Yes.
Yeah,
But if they don't know it, it's okay.
But they're going to find it. That's
Are
the
they?
thing. Do you guys use the internet a lot for buying stuff?
Yeah,
You
all
do?
the time, all the time.
So how do you protect your PIN numbers and your passwords?
I'm quite high security in my cards, so like, I have a different savings. So when I buy something, I transfer it over to another account.
If I told you that it was possible for hackers to get your email account number, your passwords, your PIN numbers, your credit card numbers on the web and sell that information to crooks who can then use it to access your accounts, your money, what would you say?
They'd be very disappointed.
Why is
Because I
that?
ain't got nothing in there.
Except they can steal your identity and use that to put you in debt.
Oh, that'd be great if they could steal my identity. The taxman can get hold of them instead of me.
If only it were that simple. But in fact, the crooks behind identity theft can buy and sell your information in a place where it's almost impossible for them to be found. Usually known as the dark web, it's one of the most sinister parts of the internet, and it doesn't show up on search engines. So crimes are committed and information traded without the people behind it all being easily traced. So I've come to find out more about it from identity theft expert Darren Innes. He runs a website called hasmyidentityBeenstolen.com, where you can check if your personal details are amongst those that have been stolen and then put on sale on the dark web.
Darren, exactly what is the dark web? It sounds really sinister.
Right, I think the best way to explain the dark web is if you imagine the internet as an iceberg. Traditionally, we see about 4% of the internet through normal search engines, so Google, Safari, etc. 96% of the internet is hidden by password-protected websites, and in that 96%, there's a belief that there's a lot of criminality happening.
What exactly are the criminals doing down there in that bit of the iceberg?
Well, anything. There are sites where you can go on and buy drugs and have them delivered. You can even, they believe, find a hitman if you want one on the dark web. What we're concerned about is the amount of identities that are up for sale on the dark web.
So they're getting this information. Once they've got it, what are they doing with it? Are they using it themselves?
They sell it between gangs. So one gang may find your email and password, and then they'll sell it to another organisation who will then use it to start doing things like phishing emails where they try to get data off you, or they'll use researchers to find things like your date of birth, where you live, that kind of information. And they build that up over a period of time. And that process can take up to 2 years.
But in that time, they'll build a complete financial and personal profile of you, accessing exactly what kind of information?
Credit card numbers, your date of birth, electoral roll, secret answers. So a common one is your mother's maiden name.
Darren's company estimates that it has over 600 million records in their database, and they're adding a whopping 300,000 more every day.
Presumably the criminals are going to always be one step ahead of the law enforcement agencies.
Well, bizarrely, they generally are. The faster we come up with a way of preventing something, they've already thought of the next step.
Darren then showed me a site on the dark web where criminals are making use of the data that they've stolen. I'm looking at what first appears to be a normal shopping site, but I soon realised that what's on sale here isn't what you'd find at the supermarket.
What you're looking at here is a typical carding site. What I mean by a carding site is a site that is selling credit card data from around the world. And it just looks like any normal website that you'd go on and buy goods and services.
And they're cheap. I mean, they're selling a credit card for £2.50. This is extraordinary. You've got every country in the world here.
Yeah, I know. It truly is shocking. And the thing that I found most amazing when I started looking at this was that if you buy the data and it doesn't work within a couple of hours, the criminal will give you the money back for trying to use that credit card. It is a very organised business.
So it's honour among thieves?
Absolutely. It's shocking.
When major criminals have finished using stolen credit card details, sites like this one trade the information on so that minor criminals can use it to buy low-cost items, usually online. Darren's used the information from such sites to compile a database of people whose email addresses have been compromised. And while his is just one of the services where you can buy solutions to keep your details safe, you can also check for free if your details are on Darren's system and currently doing the rounds of the dark web. So obviously, I was keen to know if my details were at risk.
It's going to send notification to your email account, so only you can see this data.
Right.
So you have to own that email account for it to tell you, because what a criminal will do often is take over your email account or try to. So we need to keep it very, very secure. So it'll send a notification to your email address, and then it will tell you what data has been up for sale, if any.
So you've got to be careful with what you put on this, because people might hack into this and pass it on.
Yeah, we have to be very, very careful. The last thing we want to do is to aid the criminal in the abuse that they take.
So for me, it was good news.
As you can see that it's come up now, and what it's saying is that there is no data on you on the internet at the moment.
Phew, that's a relief, I can tell you. But I'm going to go home and change all my passwords.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Well, at least criminal gangs don't seem to have got at my details, but unfortunately the same can't be said for many others. A few simple actions can help to protect your online security, notably keeping your passwords safe and changing them regularly. But nothing is foolproof. And later in the programme, we're going to be unpicking some of the crimes that use information from the dark web and trying to track down who's behind them.
For many of us, I'd guess staying connected to the internet has become an essential part of our lives, not just at home or at work, but when we're out and about as well. Smartphones and tablets have made that really easy, especially as these days so many of the places we visit, like cafes, pubs or hotels, will offer free Wi-Fi for customers, so wherever we are, we can quickly log on. But is it always a good idea to connect to those networks? Because it could be that some of them aren't as safe or even as genuine as you might think. Well, our technology expert David McClelland has been conducting an experiment, and the results may make you think twice before you sign up to the first free Wi-Fi you see.
Public Wi-Fi is everywhere, in hotels, shops, cafes and beyond. But while it may be a convenient way to log on when we're out and about, how do we know if those connections are trustworthy?
The bus stop where I wait has like a free Wi-Fi area for like 30 minutes. So when I'm waiting for my bus, it's really good because you can just go on your phone and it doesn't cost you a penny.
Even if they don't have a passcode, I'd always test them out, and then if they work, I will use them.
Often the shops that you go in, you kind of choose those specifically because they've maybe got free Wi-Fi.
But free doesn't necessarily mean secure. And internet security specialists like our technology expert David McClelland are worried that some Wi-Fi hotspots can be abused by cyber criminals.
I think people are drawn to public Wi-Fi because we all love a free lunch, and we're also very mindful of not going over our monthly data allowance in our service plans, because that can be quite expensive. The problem is, increasingly we're sacrificing security for convenience, and while we're drinking a coffee or maybe having a cake in a coffee shop, it could well be that hackers are snacking on our personal details as we do so.
David's convinced that fraudsters may already be setting up fake Wi-Fi hotspots that could give them access to all your online details. And to prove how easily we might fall for it, he set up his own free public Wi-Fi hotspot in a busy cafe.
We're in a coffee shop in London where we've set up a wireless network. Now this is a spoof wireless network, just with this little box here, and it's broadcasting a hotspot that you might find in a normal coffee shop called free Wi-Fi. We are waiting to see how many people connect to this over the couple of hours or so that we're here.
David's network is simply called free Wi-Fi, and anyone coming into the cafe will have the option of selecting it. But with no information about who is providing the Wi-Fi connection, these coffee shop customers can't be certain whether it's a legitimate connection or a scammer watching their every move. Luckily, in this case, as soon as anyone logs on, they'll get a message explaining what we're doing.
It's just an experiment. We're not collecting any personal details. There's a Rip Off Britain pop-up page that comes up here instead. But it helps to illustrate just how easily people are willing to log on to a network without any idea whatsoever what it actually is. Oh, someone's just connected. Oh gosh, yeah. It's all kicking off here.
While David waits to see how many unsuspecting customers will be tempted by his free Wi-Fi, he's going to meet Rip Off Britain viewer Joey Steele, who emailed us because he's worried about how safe the public networks he uses are. Joey thinks he takes all the right steps to protect himself, but is he right?
I'm connecting to loads of different Wi-Fi hotspots and free public ones. Am I putting myself at more risk using the different ones?
It doesn't matter whether you're connecting to a wireless network that a hacker has set up or whether you're connecting to a genuine network from a cafe like this. Both of them are vulnerable.
So what makes it so unsafe?
You run the risk of a hacker doing the digital equivalent of eavesdropping, basically.
And those ever more sophisticated scammers can find plenty of ways to take advantage of even the simplest details they get hold of in this way.
In the right hands, somebody can use those bits of information against you as an identity theft or an identity fraud attack.
And it's not just your smartphone that's vulnerable to attacks like this. Laptop computers or tablets are just as viable to hackers looking to get hold of your information. One simple piece of advice if you're surfing the internet using Wi-Fi is to look out for the websites whose addresses begin with the letters HTTPS. The S stands for secure. Banks and many shops now use them, and you'll know you're safe because you'll see a little padlock sign by the address. That's just one of the tips Joey's going to keep in mind.
I think that I'm going to not connect to Wi-Fi networks automatically. That's probably the biggest thing, because if I don't know that I'm connecting to them, I don't know that I'm putting myself at risk.
Back inside, the fake network David set up has been running for just an hour, but we have already had quite a few coffee shop customers attempting to log on.
In real time right now, I'm seeing people logging on to this spoof network that we've created, trying to visit web pages. It's very exciting. It's like watching some real drama unfold in real time.
And when we approached some of the customers who had tried to log on to our network, it was clear they really weren't aware of why it could be so risky.
Are you aware of the fact that when you're logging onto these networks, potentially people might be able to eavesdrop, to snoop in on the data that you're sending and receiving over the internet?
Marginally, I guess. Although generally I only really log on in coffee shops and on what I presume to be known networks.
So what will you do differently now you're a bit more aware of the risks of public Wi-Fi?
Most likely just make sure that the network I'm connecting to is in fact the network of the establishment that I'm in.
Throughout the afternoon, there was a steady stream of other customers falling for our fake free Wi-Fi.
Experiment's finished. We've been here for 4 hours, and in that time we've had 15 different connection attempts onto our fake wireless hotspot. That's 15 people who potentially might be surrendering their private and personal information to hackers and scammers.
So is there anything more the providers of public Wi-Fi could be doing to help protect us? We contacted the top 3 coffee shop chains, Cafe Nero, Starbucks and Costa, to see what they do to ensure their Wi-Fi networks are secure. Cafe Nero chose not to comment, but the others said that they put preventative measures in place and monitor against any risks. And they reiterated David's advice to only use secure websites. Starbucks, along with BT, which provides the chain's Wi-Fi, told us that by its very nature, public Wi-Fi always carries a potential risk if unsecured websites are being used. But they said that they have planned upgrades later this year to further improve Wi-Fi security in their outlets. And Costa, with their Wi-Fi provider O2, told us that their public Wi-Fi network has a personalised welcome page when users sign in, so that users can be confident they're connected to a fully monitored and secure service. But David believes that some public Wi-Fi providers could do more to warn users that their connection may not be as secure as you might think. And he also feels that we ourselves should be more careful when going online, whether we're on the go or at home.
If you've got an unencrypted network that you're running at home, then you run the risk of hackers being able to see what you're sending and receiving over the internet. But if I were a cyber criminal, I would be able to use this data to steal money from people, to perform all kinds of identity theft, identity fraud. It's really serious stuff.
Well, luckily for us, David's put together some tips on using Wi-Fi safely, and you can find them on our website, bbc.co.uk/ripoffbritain.
Earlier in the programme, we heard about the dark web, the secret corners of the internet where fraudsters and criminals can buy and sell stolen information and identities. Now, although my information appears not to be there, there are at least 5 million people whose personal and valuable information is. In fact, no sooner had we finished filming with identity theft expert Darren Innes than he called us back to tell us that he believed he had intercepted a potential fraud involving stolen credit card details that were being used to buy very expensive goods. Darren had picked up what he thought was suspicious patterns of activity on one of the websites on the dark web. What he'd noticed was that several different email addresses were being used to order goods that were apparently all being delivered to one home address.
You don't find different individuals with the same email address. I mean, that's a statistical improbability. So that was the immediate flag for us. If you find a pattern within your data, that it's pretty straightforward to realise that that is a criminal group who are receiving goods that they will then sell on to other individuals with a view to make money.
Darren suspected that whoever was using these different email addresses was ordering goods paid for using stolen credit card details and then getting them delivered to what's known as a drop house.
When they take over your identity, they replace your address with a particular address that they control. Your goods are then delivered after goods have been paid for with your credit card to that address, and the criminal then has possession of them. Normally they're typical high-value items, so they could be high-value clothing, they could be electrical goods, anything that the criminal can pass on quickly and make their money out of it.
If he's right, this kind of criminal activity is particularly hard to track, as anything that is carried out on the dark web leaves little or no footprint. So once the criminal has bought the stolen details, they're virtually impossible to find.
In this case, we have no idea of telling who the actual criminal is. What we can tell is that it's most likely to be a gang of criminals operating out of the same address. So they're getting deliveries of goods on a regular basis that then they go on to sell. A lot of the gangs will be operating internationally. So they may be sitting in a country in Africa or a country in Eastern Europe, defrauding us, carrying out the technology piece of this, carrying out the ordering of the goods, and then they will have 1 or 2 people in the UK that receive those goods and then either sell them on or put them in a container and ship them to another country.
To check whether Darren's intelligence was right, we contacted the customer whose credit card details had been stolen. They confirmed to us that they had also just been made aware of the fraud by their credit card company, so in the nick of time, the fraud had been stopped. But we wanted to know more about who lived at the address to which the goods were apparently being delivered, and whether they really had any links with criminals using the dark web. So we've come up with a ruse to try and find out. We're going to send an empty parcel to the same postal address that was being used by the spate of orders that Darren spotted. But we'll address it to the name of a person that we know does not live there. So the question is, will whoever is there accept it or come clean that it isn't for them? Well, Darren is pretty confident about what he thinks is going to happen.
The person will probably not even think about it and just sign the goods, but when you question them, they'll most likely play dumb.
Is he right? Well, posing as a delivery man, one of our team is making up the parcel.
Okay, what I'm about to do is write a fake name. So I'm going to make up a fake name here, write that on the box, and then attempt to give it to the people living in the house. So the fake name's now in the box, and I'm going to attempt to deliver it. Hello, mate. Got a package for you.
Oh, thank you.
So, yep. All right.
So the person at the house happily accepted a parcel that was not for them. But in case that was simply an honest mistake, we're going to deliver a second parcel. And this time, we've addressed it to Julia Somerville, and we know she doesn't live there. So what will whoever answers the door say when we ask if she does?
Hello, got a package. Does this person live here?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Thanks.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
The person who answered the door not only accepted the parcel, but also falsely claimed that the addressee was someone who lived there. Now, we knew this wasn't true, so went back to the house for an explanation.
Excuse me, hi, do you live here?
No, I don't.
Hello, we're from BBC's Rip Off Britain. We'd like to know why you've accepted 2 parcels from made-up names. So we've just come back from the house, and the occupants didn't have too much to say for themselves. They accepted 2 parcels with names that we clearly made up, and they slammed the door on us.
Now, the fact that our parcels were accepted doesn't actually prove any link to the fraudulent orders that Darren spotted, but it is enough to get his alarm bells ringing.
By the very nature that they're signing for a set of goods that they didn't pay for, leads on to them being suspicious.
And it remains the case that, for whatever reason and whoever did it, some of the goods ordered to this address were ordered illegally, using personal details bought and sold on the dark web. So Darren has advice to make sure that the next time, it's not your information being stolen and used this way.
The bottom line is we have to be responsible for our own personal data. We have to change our password regularly. We have to look at our credit file and see if there's been anybody trying to access it. We do need to take note of our bank account statements and see if there's been activity on there that we're not aware of. That is really the only way we're going to prevent this.